G'day viewers, it's Peter here. How are they hanging? For those of you that think it's always warm and sunny in Australia, I'll just turn the camera around so you can see what it's like outside. It's raining, it's about 16 degrees, we're in winter here in Australia. I live in a city called Melbourne, which is the southernmost big city in Australia. And yes, it does get cold in Australia. It's about 16 degrees today and I'm still walking around in shirt sleeves. But it does get cold here in Australia, so for those of you that don't live in a world that's upside down, the further south you go, the colder it is here. But let's get out of the rain and go into my shed. Alright, so what are we looking at the little Datsun today? I've got some interesting stories to tell you. I'll find a torch first. Now, for those of you that remember, we had some deposition of aluminium, and it is quite big chunks. Can you see there? That's from that molten piston. Now, I'm wary to take that out with the hone because I fear that it will block up the stones and cause the stones to wear unevenly. I don't want bits of aluminium being in the hone. So what my plan is to, if this will stick somewhere, use some woodworking tools. Now I've got a 2.5 inch gouge here. I bought this when I was 15 years old, and if I put it in from the bottom, so you can, I'm trying to work out what you can see. So you can't see the part that I want. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Can you see? That is removing the aluminium. I can't really do it through the camera, but you'll just have to take my... Actually, I think you can see some evidence on the edge of the... So that is going to get rid of the bulk of the aluminium before I run the hone through it. If anyone's interested in my history, I'm not a motor mechanic, I'm a pattern maker. And a bit of history, this is a gouge used for carving wood, and pattern makers' chisels are very different than carpenter's chisel. This is a pattern maker's chisel. It's about 100 years old. It would have been 9 inches long when it was new. This one's in very good condition, and pattern makers don't hit the chisels with a hammer. They tend to carve the wood using just their hands. And here we've got a 2-inch one. This tool is probably 100 years old as well, and some man would have bought that as an apprentice and sharpened it and sharpened it and sharpened it over his lifetime, and then when he retired when he was 70 years old or something, that is all that was left, and I've got his legacy. So I'm sure that could tell some stories, those chisels. Now, after I get the bulk off with the chisel, I've got some spirits of salts here. In Australia we call this spirits of salts or hydrochloric acid. In America I think they call it muriatic acid. In England I think they call it hydrochloric acid, the same as us, I'm not sure. But it's interesting how different countries call different things different names. So that is my plan, to get the bulk of the aluminium out with a chisel or a gouge, get the rest of it to a matte finish with spirits of salts, then run the hone through it, and hopefully that won't block up the stone, because I know that cast iron is obviously much harder than aluminium, but I don't want that getting lodged in the stones. The next thing I forgot to tell you last time was about the crank. When you first get a crank, you pick up your hammer and you give it a ring, and that sounds like about D sharp to me. Any piano tuners out there will be able to tell whether or not that is D sharp, because I'm sure that the majority of my viewers are piano tuners that happen to rebuild engines in their spare time. I'm sure that there's millions of those people in my audience. So if you're a piano tuner who rebuilds engines, you're on the right channel. Anybody who noticed, I might have a black thumb today. I've got one thumbnail black, and in Australia there's only two reasons to have a black thumbnail. And the first one is that you're a trans man or some sort of canufta, and I'll let you ponder that for the moment whilst we go over to why I'm running a little bit late. This video has taken a while to get here because I actually had another job on my car. I've got a 1958 Morris, and I wanted to put electric thermatic fans on it in front of the radiator and behind the grille, and there was no room for it, so I actually had to make this bracket out of a flat piece of 1mm steel. And it doesn't look like it, but it actually took me about 3 days. And it was problematic because you can see this face and this face are not parallel. There's about 15 degrees difference in them. And because the space was so tight, I had to knock down these the corners and things like that to get it in and out. And also, see, I drilled these large holes to get some airflow around the fan, because I didn't want to inhibit the performance of the fans, or pretty much defeating the process. So that's what I've been up to, and that's why I'm a bit late. And anyone's complaining about how slow this rebuild's going, she who must be obeyed is up there, and I'm trying to paint the house at the same time, and I'm doing work on this 1958 Morris. So things are only going to go at the speed that I'm happy with. I was talking about being in the southernmost part of Australia. Sorry, I've just seen these ACL bearings. These are made in Tasmania. I'm in the southernmost big city in Australia, but there is an island south of me, about 200 miles, called Tasmania, and that's, funnily enough, where those ACL engine bearings are made. And just before I go, if anyone is wondering how I got a black thumb, the second reason you can get a black thumb in Australia is because you've been painting a bracket that you made to mount some thermatic fans to your 1958 Morris. So that's where we are at the moment, fellas. So uru, and see you later.